Okay. Right now, I'm assuming you guys know this, but for video's sake, I'm an Assembly of God pastor. So you have to interview an Assembly of God pastor. Is that part of this?
I don't think so.
But I actually grew up in the Lutheran church.
Okay.
And had really no plans to go into the ministry. You know, as a little kid growing up. I went through confirmation, and as part of that process, you sit down with the pastor and your mom and dad, for like your final interview for confirmation. And in that meeting, the Lutheran pastor, said to my mom and dad, I think Mark should go into the ministry. And I couldn't get out of that room fast enough. The only thing on my mind at that point in my life was playing baseball. So we, over the course of the next couple of years, we ended up in an Assembly of God church. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, and we started, my junior year of high school, we started traveling with a youth group ministry once a month. And on one of those trips, after we did a church service, we were driving back to the church, and we were just singing worship songs in the van, and I was just praying, and I just really, at that moment, sensed God saying to me, Mark, I really want you to go into ministry. And so that was kind of the moment where I acknowledged that this had been a target in my life that he had been planning me for. At that point, I was thinking, I'm going to go back into the Lutheran church. I'm now Spirit-filled, but I still had a real burden and affiliation with the Lutheran church. But over the next couple of years, the Lord really confirmed He was directing me to North Central and to go into youth ministry. That's where I ended up. To Mount Olivet. After I graduated North Central, I did an internship with youth ministry with Jerry Strandquist in Kenosha. And out of that, he had a real good connection with a friend of his named Bob Ona, pastored in Eden Prairie. I ended up at Eden Prairie working in youth ministry. And at the same time, I was living in Apple Valley, working a part-time job down by North Central at the hospital, and youth pastoring out in Eden Prairie. And this triangle we were driving was just getting tiresome. And we were just praying, Lord, where do you want us? Do you really want us driving out here? So I met with our district youth director. At that time it was Mark Dean. And we just said, we just feel like God's saying we're supposed to be doing something else, but we love what we're doing and where we're doing it, but we need to consider something else. And he prayed with us. He didn't really have any ideas for us, and so we got up. We were walking out of his office, and he said, wait a second, I just saw something in our district letter. And he pulls it out, and he says, have you ever heard of Mount Olivet Assembly? And Teresa and I looked at each other and just laughed because we lived a mile from that church. We said, okay, we're taking this as a sign. And we went there, found out they were looking for a youth pastor worship leader, and over a couple month interview process, that's what we ended up then at Mount Olivet. So that was 1988. We've been there ever since. So I was youth and worship leader until 1996, and our senior pastor moved to Arizona that year, and I got voted in, or I like to say I got kicked out of youth ministry that year and ended up having to work with adults. What I learned as a youth pastor from my pastor at Eden Prairie, Bob Ona, he took one day a week. That was his study day, and he wasn't going to do anything else in ministry, but that was his study day. And so I felt like that was just a great system, and so I incorporated that. So Friday is my prayer and study day, and I wish I could write my sermons earlier, but I can't. I've got to get everything else done, and then I can focus on it. So I really stay away from phones and email and stuff like that, and do the prayer time early in the day, and personal, just, God, what are you saying to me? And then out of that, just really begin to focus on whatever our series is at that time. We're usually in a series that we're working on as a church. So Fridays, and it's just, to me, that's my day. I don't do anything else. It's I consider it just an 8-hour study day, and then I revisit it again Saturday nights we have a service, prayer and communion service at 5 o'clock. And then basically when that service is done through till I fall asleep, I'm kind of focused on my sermon and working on anything surrounding it at that point. So basically, Fridays is a study day for me. Good question. Daily, for just myself, in prayer, praying in the Spirit. I think part of not growing up in the Assemblies of God, but in a denomination that didn't embrace Pentecost, because that's important to me. That's how I ended up in this movement. I really make sure I take time every day to just be praying in the Spirit as I'm just kind of moving through my life. But morning prayer time, and then for our office staff, I believe in tithing our day to the Lord. So I encourage our team to tithe their day. So if they're putting in an 8-hour day, and we don't really have an 8 to 4 time clock or anything like that, but they're putting in an 8-hour day, I expect them to take 48 minutes of that day that they're just giving it to the Lord. So that their job is about prayer and the Word as well. And then once a week, as a staff, early in the week, we have a prayer time where we get a list of prayer needs from our church every week, and we as a staff go through those prayer needs and call them out before the Lord. So we do that early in the week, and that's kind of our team devotional prayer time as a staff. But then, personally, either personally on my own, and then also in the office, I have a prayer emphasis, prayer in the Word. It's a very broad question. Well, to narrow it down, I actually, anybody that's asked me about going into ministry, I actually put out to them, first thing I say is, if you can do anything else, do that.
Yeah.
Because to me, that answering that question really solidifies the call in a person's life. But if somebody can do something else, please go do it. But to be compelled by your own call and the burden that God gives you, I think is a key component to my advice for somebody going into ministry. So if you can't do anything else, then do ministry. And my advice there is broad advice. It's simply this: pray and then obey. And I wish I'd come up with that, but that's actually Dr. Cho's theme, that we need to pray about what we're supposed to be doing. Because I think today especially we can get so caught up with what the church is doing culturally. Relevance is a strong word. That if that can be our only rudder if we're not giving ourselves to prayer. And so I think those things are important, but I think prayer has got to be where those things flow out of. So we pray, and then whatever God tells you to do, you need to be doing it. You need to simply respond and be obedient and do it. So we can get away from that as pastors because, hey, we're a pastor, we got a job, but it's got to be about our call. You know, we're gonna simply respond to whatever it is the Lord's leading us to do, not the latest leadership theme, or we were just talking about orange curriculum or whatever it is. We need to know, hey, this is what God wants me to be doing at this time. So that's got to flow out of a life of prayer. One. That's really tough.
A couple.
Yeah. Because I really look, when I'm looking at somebody, I'm looking at 3 areas: heart, mind, and strength.
Okay.
And I feel like that comes through Christ's teaching so often that we can't ignore that. Mm-hmm. So in regard to just their heart, that they have a real passion for God, for their family, and for the church, and specifically in that order, that they don't get church and ministry ahead of their family.
Yeah.
So from their heart, their passion for the Lord, for their family, and for church. And then in regard to their mind, to me that's more of where I'm looking at them socially. I want to know that somebody's going to be able to relate to other people and carry conversation and just be real, just be normal. So that's kind of the mind or the social aspect. And then the body, personal holiness to me is a key. I just got to know that this is a person that's going to be walking in holiness in their life, not just in their job, but in their life. So heart, mind, and strength. For me, it's kind of almost like a tangent to anything else, but it's pride.
Okay.
I have an antenna for pride, and I just can't deal with it. Because that person is going to tend away from prayer. That's the key thing, is that will lead them to self-reliance and coming up with their own deal. So prayer, I guess, could be the other side of that coin.
Yeah.
But I just feel like if you're a person that is struggling with pride, and that's what's coming through, you're going to struggle with having a life of prayer. So, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like a vague answer, but pride, I think, touches so many areas of our life that to me, I can't work with that. I can't. It's a good question. For me, as I loved youth ministry, in fact, that's what I still want to be when I grow up as a youth pastor. But for me, it was that transition from youth to adults. And I hate to even say this on video, but when I came out of youth ministry, when I was in youth ministry, I kept saying, why would anybody want to be a senior pastor? You've got 10 times more people, 10 times more problems. I just want to work with kids before they get their walls up, and in a lot of ways I still believe that. But one thing I didn't realize was I found with adults is there can be 10 times more pettiness. There's just there's a real struggle with adults that haven't grown up spiritually that I personally have trouble dealing with. So I don't know. Again, that's kind of a broad answer, but yeah, I really, in fact, still today when I go to camps, I'll be at camps this summer. I like junior high camps because they're crazy, but they don't have their walls up yet. And you can really get in and be real, I think, with where kids are at as junior highers and help them. That can be very difficult with adults. I'm dealing with the situation today where I've had a couple of adults really just struggling in their life. I said, okay, here's a plan. We're going to do this. You're going to do this. You're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And for over a month now, they keep coming back to me to meet with me about their crisis, but they haven't done any of these things. That's frustrating. It's really frustrating. But with a kid, I can sit them down and say, hey, we said do this. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It seems like it's easier to get them on track with the things that they need to be doing.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think I kind of answered that a little bit with just where I see our priorities need to be the Lord, our family, and church. And the way I practice that, I can give you actually a good example of that. Well, for me, Mondays is my day off. So I really guard that. I try not to work on Mondays. And another good example this week is I had somebody that I'll use it like this, crisis situation that they've been putting off, but now they want their crisis to be my crisis. And I've got one day that I can meet with them this week. They want to meet Tuesday night, and that's going to be my only night this week with family. And so I just said, no, I've got an appointment. I cannot meet with you that night. So they're meeting with me at a different time, which they're not real happy with, but I think it's important that you guard, and Pastor St. John is really good at teaching young pastors that, and he taught me that early. Just schedule your family. Make it a night that you know it's not going to be interrupted, and just really guard that in your life. Well, I think looking for, I think the word mentor is overused, but looking for somebody that you can say, I see things in their life, in their ministry, mostly in their life, that I need to have happen in my life. For me, that was somebody named Olson, a missionary that we had for years, and I'd say probably the foremost teacher on prayer in our movement. Whenever Calvin was around, I just want to hang around him. So I think that's just a great lesson, just be looking for people in your life, and especially in your vein of ministry, but that you can really glean off of. And I think the other thing is just what we were just talking about, is really guarding your family time, but also your prayer and study time. For me, those are two very sacred days a week where I know this is not going to be a work day at all. This is just deal with family, live my life, and then the study day for me is another. It's just a very sacred. It's set apart. It's what I'm going to do, and it's good to communicate that. Our congregation really knows. People ask me about meetings, and that are sensitive to my schedule, and they'll say, "Well, I know you've got Mondays off, so I don't want to." It's just really neat to see, and then others that are even a little more closer say, "Well, I know Friday is your study day." So it's interesting to have a church of they're aware of your priorities, and I think that's a key thing in ministry too. Just to be open and honest with your congregation, and just it'll help you in ministry. Going to the gym is a great component. I think you've got to have a stress relief physically. God made us that way. And it's interesting, there's times in ministry where there's seasons of stress coming that He's prepared me for. He's impressed on me, I just have a sense of, okay, I need to be lifting weights during the season, or actually on a different running regimen or something. And right on the heels of that, Olson, I'll end up in this season of just real heavy burden and stress. And it's like He's been preparing me for that physically. So, you mentioned the gym, but I think that's a key thing. And just having something that you like to do. For me, it's Frisbee golf. I'm going to the Frisbee golf store after we meet, and trying to jump into a Frisbee golf tournament tomorrow. So having something that you like to do that's away from church, away from ministry, is a good thing to have. I don't know if I really answered that for you, but
no, that's good.
The other side of that is definitely having somebody to go to. And our district is phenomenal that way, of being able to go to them and have somebody to talk to. And I've been in a situation where I ended up on one side of a fence and a staff member ended up on another, and we were both able to go to the same person, basically, and be able to deal with it separately and process it. And not every district has that, but Pastor St. John really does a great job of helping that, facilitating that in our state. So that's a resource to find early and tap into. Early on in ministry, where there wasn't really a district support system, for me it was pastors in my life, Jerry Strangquist, Bob Ona, guys like that Rod Carlson, that I knew I could go and talk to, and they had my back, help me through some tough times. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great job.